What kind of person do you want to be? When we speak about virtue, that is the question that we are asking. What kind of person do you want to be? When I was a kid, growing up out on the farm, one year for Christmas, our family, all of us kids together, received a jungle gym that Dad put up out in our front yard. And when we were younger, it worked great for a jungle gym. As we got older, it was obviously too short for us, and it didn't serve its purpose as a jungle gym anymore. But myself and my brothers, we turned it into more of a basketball hoop. There were 5 slots on the top where you could cross it just as you're going across it. But we used the middle one for a basketball hoop. It was about 7 foot tall, so we were able to dunk on each other, which is why we loved it and why we used it. But it was often 2 brothers against 2 brothers. And while we were playing, we always wanted to be a certain kind of person. We wanted to be the Michael Jordan or the Magic Johnson or the Larry Bird or someone like that. But as we got older, we realized that being a professional athlete wasn't in the cards for us, nor was it someone that we really wanted to model our life after. It wasn't someone that we wanted to become. And when I got to college, I met men who were virtuous, such that when you met them, it's not that you felt lesser than them, but you knew you didn't have what they had, and you desired to seek and to pursue what they had. It called you, being around them called you to be someone that you were not, to be someone that was closer to God, to be someone, to be virtuous, to be the man or the woman that you were called to be. And if you've ever met someone like that, you know what I'm talking about. They call you to something greater. They call you out of yourself. They call you to be great. They call you to be great, to live the life in Christ, ultimately that we are called to live. We talk about the saints many times, and sometimes when we think about the saints, we think about someone that is way far away from us, someone that is not personal to us, and so seeking the same things that they sought seems so far away. But when there's someone in our life that we can put our finger on and we can say, that's who I want to be, and we can watch them and we spend time with them, we want to be like them. And we begin to put on the virtues that they put on as well. Today we finish our talk on the cardinal virtues by talking about fortitude and temperance. The virtue of fortitude enables a person to stand firm against and endure the hardships of life and to remain steadfast in pursuing what is good. So it always goes back to prudence, remember? Prudence is about knowing what is good and what is evil, doing the good and avoiding the evil. In fortitude, steadfastness and endurance reflect the soul's clinging on to what is good. Fortitude is a matter of, oftentimes we call it courage, but it's actually more than just courage. Genuine fortitude does not entail making sacrifice or risking one's life arbitrarily or foolishly. However, genuine fortitude is always exercised in accord with reason, assesses the true nature and value of things, asking whether something is really worth sacrificing for, and involves a just cause. Fortitude strengthens the individual's resolve to resist temptation, to overcome personal weaknesses, and make sacrifices for what is good. I think of St. Thomas More. St. Thomas More, remember, was the chancellor to King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII defected from the Catholic Church because the church would not grant him annulment when he was validly ordained to his wife. And so he divorced her anyway and said, I will put myself at the head of the church. And St. Thomas More continued to say, well, you can't do that. But St. Thomas More used his wisdom to not foolishly give his life over. He did everything in his power to hang on to his life and cling to his life until he realized there was nothing more he could do and he would have to give his life. And thus King Henry VIII had him killed, had him beheaded. It's the same thing in our life. We don't want to give up our life foolishly. We don't want to make a foolish sacrifice of ourselves, but we want to, in due reason and in good conscience, do what is necessary to seek the virtues in our life. To have fortitude does not mean that a person is immune from fear. Fear is a natural emotion that arises within us. But fortitude helps us to overcome that fear. We recognize the fear, but it does not allow the fear to prevent us from doing what is good, or it just prevents us from doing what is evil also. Think then of how important fortitude is to withstand peer pressure. Fortitude strengthens a person to conquer the fear of death or persecution, and even to make the ultimate sacrifice of martyrdom. Fortitude helps us to stand in the face of evil and to say, I will live my life for the good, for God, and for who I am called to be. Virtues stemming from fortitude include magnanimity. That may not be a word that you've ever heard before. Magnanimity literally means greatness of soul. That means to do the best that we can in all things that we are called to do. To do the best in our jobs, to do the best in our schoolwork, to do the best in our marriages, to do the best that we can in being a parent. It inclines a person to perform great works in every virtue. Magnanimity. Munificence inclines a person to perform great physical works. Patience inclines a person to endure present evils and perseverance. Fortitude doesn't just entail courage to overcome fear, but also is perseverance, to endure through the difficulties in order to obtain the good in which we pursue. The vices contrary to fortitude include timidity, to be timid in the face of fear, not making a decision, recklessness, doing stupid things with our life that could potentially end our life or hurt ourselves. Presumption, ambition, vainglory, pusillanimity, that's the opposite of magnanimity. Pusillanimity is smallness of soul, not doing our best and not seeking the best for who we are, and inconstancy. With every virtue, there's always a vice. There's always a contrary. So we want to seek the virtue in order to become the virtuous person and not to be the vicious person. Then finally, our fourth and final cardinal virtue is temperance. Temperance enables a person to keep his passions and emotions under the control of reason. Temperance moderates a person's attraction to pleasures and gives balance in the use of created goods. It also involves using goods in the way in which they are meant to be used. Here one approaches pleasures and the use of created goods in the light of faith, of reason, and of one's own vocation and circumstances of life. It's important to know that there is a proper use of emotions, and there is extremes on both ends. There are some who have no emotion. That's not virtuous. There are some who are over-emotional, and that's not virtuous. There's a middle ground. There's times when we ought to cry because something is sad. That's the appropriate use of the emotion, and that's a good thing. But sometimes, we probably all know someone, they cry at everything. We probably know someone at both extremes. But the middle ground is to have the proper emotion in the proper situation at the proper time and in the proper way. The exercise of temperance includes two essential parts: a sense of shame and a sense of honor. The sense of shame causes a person to fear the feeling of disgrace, confusion, or embarrassment from being intemperate in action. But the sense of honor causes a person to want to feel the dignity, esteem, or love for practicing temperance. On the one hand, the sense of shame prevents a person from acting intemperately and therefore sinfully, while on the other hand, the sense of honor inspires a person to act temperately and therefore meritoriously. Temperance in action is self-preservation, whereas intemperance in action is self-degradation and self-destruction. The virtues that align with temperance include abstinence, sobriety, chastity, purity, continence, humility, gentleness, clemency, modesty, and lack of greed. The vices opposed to temperance are gluttony, drunkenness, unchastity, impurity, incontinence, pride, wrath, and greed. Just to note, continence and incontinence deals with sexual pleasures, not other things. To be continent is to completely abstain from sexual pleasure. When we are young, we don't grow up saying, I want to be a thief. We don't grow up saying we want to be a drunk. We don't grow up saying that we want to be a fornicator. When we are young, we have high goals. We have high dreams. And we want to fulfill those dreams. We want to be that person that God is calling us to be. And the only way to do it is through virtue. By imitating the one who is the most virtuous, the true man, who is Jesus Christ himself. To take on the nature of Christ, remember, is what it means to be virtuous. To become like our beloved, who is our God, who has come down to be like us, to raise us, to be in his nature. Let us seek virtue in all of our lives. Let us seek virtue in everything that we do, to be the man or the woman that God is calling us to be. Just a note on the virtues. Remember, virtue comes in incremental growth. And a couple of the things that I was always taught is that Saint Jose Maria Escrivá always talked about the first minute of the day when your alarm goes off. To win the battle in the first moment of the day. Every battle for virtue every growth in virtue is a battle. It's a battle against our will. It's a battle against our weaknesses. So every time that we overcome that battle, we are growing in virtue. So he talks about the heroic minute in the first minute of the day to get out of bed and to get going, to give God the first things in the day. And also, we were always taught the other thing at the beginning of the day to win the battles, just to make the bed, and just to get things in order at the very beginning of the day, so that you at least win those battles, and then the rest of the day, the rest of the battles hopefully become easier. Those are just little ways in which we can grow in virtue to help us to win those bigger battles that will also come along the way.